It's Election Day in America. That's where we're starting a special all-election edition of The 7 from The Washington Post. I'm Hannah Jewell. It's Tuesday, November 5th. Let's get you caught up with today's 7 stories. After 2 years of campaigning, a pair of assassination attempts, and a last-minute candidate change, Americans will decide who they want to lead a deeply divided country. More than 80 million of them have already cast their ballots. Early voting has gone mostly smoothly around the country, though voters have faced long lines in some places, including in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania. The question on everyone's mind, though, is when will we know the results? And I'm sorry to say, we just don't know. It could take days. Polls remain tight, and close races take longer to count. The Post's polling averages show that all 7 swing states are separated by 2 points or less. But that doesn't mean the outcome will necessarily be close. If things move only 2 points from where we think they stand, you could see a swing state sweep for either candidate, and we could see a decisive election. Number 2. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump had a frantic last day of campaigning. Harris spent the entire day in Pennsylvania, which both campaigns view as perhaps the most important swing state. She ended her day with a star-studded event on the Rocky Steps at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Here's part of her closing message to supporters.
Our campaign has tapped into the ambitions, the aspirations, and the dreams of the American people. And we know it is time for a new generation of leadership in America.
Meanwhile, Trump split his time between Pennsylvania and North Carolina before his final rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And speaking in Pittsburgh earlier in the day, he seemed ready to blame his supporters if he doesn't win the election.
And the only way we can blow it is if you blow it. I've given you the ball. I mean, you got to go and vote.
Trump isn't the only one who appears to be laying the groundwork for what happens if he loses. State and federal authorities have also been preparing for what to do if Trump tries to challenge the election outcome again. Number 3. Abortion rights are on the ballot today in 10 states. Since the Supreme Court overturned the constitutional right to an abortion in 2022, many states have restricted or banned the procedure. That has galvanized women voters in the 2022 midterms and beyond. And Harris hopes that will help her chances today. At a march in Washington, D.C. this past weekend, 77-year-old Linda Anderson talked about what this moment means to her.
I remember when women were crying out for support at medical care because they needed to have their husbands involved in their lives, and they had no choice. They had to go along with whatever men wanted. So here we are today, standing up for democracy, standing up for the right to choose, standing up for all the women who come before us and behind us.
Voters in Missouri and Florida could vote today to overturn 2 of the nation's strictest abortion bans. Meanwhile, Nebraskans are voting on dueling measures to either expand or restrict access to abortion. You can see a map of the full slate of these measures in our newsletter today, plus links to all our other election content. Find that in our show notes. Number 4. Congress could be headed for an unprecedented double flip. The scenario I'm describing is one of the most unusual wrinkles in this election. The controlling party in each chamber of Congress could lose power to the other. That's never happened before. Republicans appear poised to win the Senate, which is currently controlled by the Democrats. The Democrats, meanwhile, seem to have a slight edge in the race for the Republican-controlled House. In the Senate, Democrats will almost certainly lose West Virginia and their 51-49 edge in the chamber. Democrats Sherrod Brown of Ohio and Jon Tester of Montana are also fighting to win re-election in Republican-leaning states. In the House, Democrats only need to win a handful of seats to regain control from the Republicans. A scenario where voters flip the majorities in both the House and the Senate, but in opposite directions, could lead to gridlock as a new president attempts to govern next year. The world is watching what happens in the U.S. today. That's number 5. The decision that Americans make will ripple far beyond U.S. borders. The new president will face a host of foreign policy challenges, including immigration, climate change, and wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. And Harris and Trump have vastly different stances on each of these issues. One key issue for the next president will be Israel's wars in Gaza and Lebanon. Voter anger over the devastation of Gaza has stalked the Harris campaign through its final days. Harris has faced interruptions from pro-Palestine protesters at rallies. Meanwhile, Trump has tried to capitalize on Harris's weaknesses with Arab American voters in the swing state of Michigan. But in the Middle East, many Palestinians and Israelis see little hope for peace however the election goes. Number 6. The Post will report results and winners for more than 500 elections today. Our top priority is reporting accurate information to our audience as quickly as possible, while also being transparent about where we get our data and how we decide what to publish. So here are some important details. The Associated Press provides the vast majority of the race calls that the Post will report. But we've chosen to consult other sources before reporting race calls in key presidential states and Senate contests. We're also adding an extra level of vetting before we report which presidential candidate has won in battleground states. You'll also see something new in our election coverage over the next few days. Our post-pulse election model will forecast how the votes counted so far will likely affect the final outcome of the presidential race. If you're staying up tonight, you'll be able to find live results on our homepage. But if you'd rather have an early night, I'll be back here tomorrow morning to tell you everything that happened. And at number 7, some voters are taking extreme measures to avoid Election Day stress. If everything I've talked about so far has filled you with a deep sense of dread, you're not alone. Our colleague Maura Judkis talked to a number of voters who are so miserable about Election Day that they found ways to avoid it entirely. Some anxious voters are fleeing to the woods. Others are locking away their phones, trying hypnosis, and, stocking up on cannabis. One Virginia voter said she was planning to get her wisdom teeth pulled today to be a little less sober and a little less conscious while voters cast their ballots. Another voter in Kentucky planned a colonoscopy for tomorrow when she thought the news cycle could be even worse. Here at The 7, we hope we're bringing you all the election news you need without stressing you out too much. But if you need to chill out and you don't have time to schedule a colonoscopy before tomorrow, our newsletter has some easier tips to lessen the stress today. Check that out in our show notes. All right, you're all caught up. But before you go, make sure to follow and listen to our afternoon news podcast, Post Reports. My colleagues there have new episodes out to get you ready for the election. And don't forget to tune in tonight to the Washington Post's homepage or YouTube channel starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's where you can watch our live broadcast hosted by the wonderful Libby Casey as all the results come in. We'll have reporters all across the country, and it's going to be a much calmer experience than network television. I'm Hannah Jewell. I'll meet you back here tomorrow with all the biggest election news from overnight.